So are you guys going to shoot questions or how does that work?
So, ma'am, we do have a couple of questions with us, but we would also like to know from you how how the operation work, the business model, how you take plastic and basically convert it. So how that works, then we'll shoot questions.
Okay, fine. I'll give you an introduction to the company first. Um, so we are an extremely well integrated, or I would say the only integrated waste management company, at least in India. I think in the world, but at least in India, I'm definitely sure we're the only ones. And I'm just going to go and expand on the word integrated a bit to explain to you what that is. So when we started back in 2012. Um, and in 2012, we were just manufacturers, right? We started with basic manufacturing of plastic, of final packaging, right? But somewhere along the way, in about 2 3 years, we realized we were becoming a part of, or we were just doing what everybody else was doing. It was getting, it was too generic, and we wanted to do something different, and we were a part of the problem, and all of that. So we started recycling, right? Um, and even within recycling, there were people, of course, doing recycling, but it was a very unorganized market, right? And recycling was more heavily focused on rigids. In our country, I mean, even today, it is more heavily focused on the rigids and not the flexibles. So we saw an opportunity there. And since our manufacturing was also focusing on more flexible products, we knew we had an expertise in that as well. So we started focusing on the recycling of flexibles. Now, again, over a few years, we realized that in order to recycle flexibles, you need to have collected a lot of waste, a lot of different types of waste, because waste is very non-homogeneous, right? Um, you'll have different colors which will come in. You'll have different polymer types which are, which will come in, which will either be stuck together or be stuck with food and oil and lots of other various stuff, things that you put into your dustbin if you put everything into one common bin, right? So the amount of material that you had to collect was double or triple of what you would be able to kind of segregate and recycle. So we realized that we need to start collecting material as well in order to have a safeguard of raw material, in order to get a lot of material. So then we opened up our collection centers as well. Started with one literally to today we're at 16. Um, so yeah, we have manufacturing, we have recycling, and we have collection as well. So that's how we became an integrated company. And yeah, that's where we're at today, with a more heavy focus on flexibles. About 70% of what we do is flexible and 30% is rigid, and which will always be our focus as well, because I mean, our focus was always flexibles. The reason we also started rigids is because when you're collecting plastic waste, it all comes in mixed, right? So you get a lot of different types of waste. Any next question?
Yes. So, ma'am, we'll start. Uh, Ma'am, you talked about collection centers now from 2 to 16. So that also mean employing like a lot of employees you take up. So is there any specific category that you try to employ or these collection centers, like women or any special like you try to focus upon?
So see, we are limited to the um, no, we don't, in the sense that we don't try and so we have different sections of our place where we've employed different people. So I'll give you an example. In our packaging, in our factory, there's a department of packaging, right? And in that packaging department, all the jobs are only reserved for women, because we know that women, at least in the local place where we are, where our factory is situated, women tend to prefer that job over other jobs, because all of them in, so for example, we're an Umargaon based factory, right? The women there want to go home by 5 o'clock. So what is the job that you can make sure you can get more women employment in? Because we try and balance as much as we can. We realized that packaging was one of them. So we've reserved that for women. And packaging, you'll always only find women in our offices. Now, collection centers are not in any one particular place. They're in a number of different places, right? They're segregated. They're more heavily focused in Maharashtra and Gujarat, but otherwise we have it in a few other places as well. Uh, Again, we are limited to the local people that we can get over there. So there is no specific category that we've put in place right now. There is a mix of women and men. More men, I'll be very honest there, but there is a mix of women and men, right? I'll tell you what
Yeah.
we've done differently as well. There's and it is a model that we developed in the last 1 year, which we will continue to develop on more. There's one center that we've opened up in Baramati. It's called an Afkar Kendra, right? That's what we call it because it's a bit different. Um, Over there, we, with the help of the municipality, we've set up an infrastructure for segregation of waste next to a landfill, right? Where it was sort of the municipality's ground. There was a landfill there, so that's where we set it up. All the waste pickers that used to work over there, that used to take out stuff from the landfill and then segregate it and sell it, they are the people who have been given the infrastructure to sit on, to come and segregate waste over there. So use the infrastructure, segregate your waste over there, and sell it to us. So we've tried to do that, and that's worked out really well right now. So that's something that we are looking at expanding on in a few other places.
I had a question for you, ma'am. So, what motivated the company to focus on building a circular economy for plastics in India? Because if you see, usually, if there's any other company, they usually run on crowdfunding. For example, if we take the company Ocean Brand, they're completely running on crowdfunding. So, how did this motive come up? So, Ocean Brand is a very new company which came out like recently in last 5 or 6 years or something. But since your company has been here since 2012. So what motivated you guys?
So I think I was just talking about it earlier when I gave the definition of integrated, but I'll try and tackle your question a bit differently. Um, See, what motivated us was both the aspects. It was the aspect of making sure that we are sustainable, yes, but we are economically sustainable, right? So it was also very much a business decision because it made sense to us, and it made sense, you know, with regards to the environment as well. So it was like a brilliant combination of the two, right? And I do think that a lot of decisions which are also sustainability related have to come from an economic perspective, because if your business is not going to be economically sustainable, then you're going to shut your doors and you're not going to be able to do anything, right? So what prompted the integration is, or the circularity is business decision, is something that we also, over a period of time, slowly and slowly, things made more sense. I'll give you one beautiful example of circularity. A few of our customers, I know Mercedes Benz is one of them. I know Anita Dongre is one of them. Um, we have a very sort of a closed loop circularity program that we have with them. We buy back all the waste that are created in in Mercedes, for example, their service centers, and for Anita Dongre in all of their outlets. Whatever packaging waste comes out, all of that comes back to us. We recycle it and we remake it into packaging for them. So it's a very circular, closed loop program with them, where their waste comes back to us, goes back to them, comes back to us, goes back to them. And of course, this is not a model with everybody. We're trying to do it with a few more companies as well. But uh, I mean, it's easier said than done because transportation is a huge cost in India as well. And it doesn't always make economical sense to have that model.
So, hi, ma'am. The next question will be can you share your high point or peak experience during your tenure at Lucro Plastic? Any recognition that company has achieved and that will boost your morale. So
I'll tell you what, I think it's even before I started here. It's a story that I hear from the founders. The first client they got was Maruti, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was Maruti. And that took them 4 years. So from the time of first starting to get that particular brand to become your customer, to actually making them your customer took them 4 years. And I think that was and it's always toughest, when you have a first client, it's always toughest. But once you start building up your portfolio, of course it's still not easy. It'll still take us about 6-7 months, but challenges are different now because people have to run trials and stuff in their factories. That's why it takes longer. But to actually start a conversation with any brand is much easier now, of course, now that we've established a lot of credibility. But initially it was a 4-year turnaround time, and I think that's a story where they tell us was probably the happiest moment of their lives in that sense. The first big brand I'm talking about, and not the first brand, but yeah.
Yeah,
Ma'am,
ma'am, that's a great break to get in.
how
And
did
I'll tell
you?
you a second for
Yeah.
me, maybe. Sorry. But not a brilliantly happy moment, but an extremely good moment, I'll say, is when the policy draft guidelines were made in India for PWM, which mandated the use of recycled content. Um, I think that was a very good moment as well, because it's now compulsory for people to use recycled content in their packaging. Because earlier we had to push this particular product onto people, even though we keep our prices. We are not a more costly company. Like recycled doesn't cost more than virgin, right? We try to keep it at par or somewhere around that range itself, so as to make a good selling point. But even then, to convert brands was a very difficult thing for us. But instead of pushing, now we have a bit of a pull, and I think that's yeah, another one.
So, ma'am, how do you measure your impact of every work you are doing? So, how do you measure impact? Maybe it's financial or numbers. What is that one target that Lucro, tracks?
So I think there are different targets for different departments, I'll say. Um, uh, so it's a little tough one. But we individually have impact metrics. For example, we try and make sure wherever we can cut down from the previous year, we do try and do that. We measure our transportation footprint, and it's something that, so we have an internal impact report that goes out to our shareholders as well, but our sort of internal shareholder, external also, but not customers, but sort of the shareholders of the company. So just a second, I'm just gonna get some water. So we track the transportation footprint. So we try and always improve it, but to improve it also in a way that makes business sense. So of course, if we've grown the number of collection centers, for example, the transportation footprint will grow, but you have to keep it pan it against the material, the quantum of more material that is increased, for example, right? Then we track. We track carbon saving in the sense of the metrics that has been pre-provided to us. That 1 ton of recycled HDPE will be how much carbon saving, versus if it had been left to its fate in India. 1 ton of PP is how much, recycled PP is how much carbon saving. One similarly for LD. So those are some. Then in our process, there is a lot of steps that we have taken place to make sure that there is enough impact in place, I'll say. For example, our washing. So it's a very washing intensive business as well, right? Because we're using only post-consumer waste. All the water that is used is 100% recycled. Of course, there's a 4 to 5% evaporation loss, but otherwise everything is 100% recycled, right? The water is going through over and over. The same water is going through over and over again. But even before the material can be put into washing, there are certain steps. There's a dry waste process, for example, that we call, which is dry washing. Even before water is used, there are other things that are used to dry wash the material, so that the number of cycles in water washing that it takes is lesser. Then even before that, we have 3 different levels of sorting. So 3 different levels of sorting make sure that not only is color and polymer sorting done, but even how dirty and clean the waste is sorted. So as to make sure that something doesn't need washing, doesn't go for washing. Yep.
So good evening, ma'am. So thank you for your time. So I want to know, how does collaboration with company like Marico help in creating sustainable solution for packaging?
So there's no collaboration with Marico. I know the PR that you must have, piece that you must have read says collaboration, but
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was just for attention's sake.
So,
The collaboration over here simply means that they are our clients, that we supply them. And I think Marico was probably the first big FMCG in India that had become our client. So that is why that press release piece was also extremely important, because we were now supplying something, we were supplying shrink wraps and stretch wraps, which was the first in India made of recycled material. And they were the first FMCG to convert into clients. So a collaboration in that sense simply means that they were our clients. And along with us, um, so normally you have to make the material to customer specification as well, something that would run on their machinery. So in that way, a collaboration also. And how it helps is, like I said, any big brand name that comes on board as your client always helps with the next sale.
So, good evening, ma'am. I wanted to ask that what measurable impact has Lucro achieved so far in terms of reducing virgin plastic consumption or diverting plastic waste from landfills or oceans?
So at the moment, we are collecting about, our capacities are about 50,000 tons of collection. In recycling, our capacities are about annually are about 30,000 of sort of granules made, right? Recycled granules made. And in our production, which is the film making, our capacity is about 17,000 tons annually. So yeah.
Ma'am,
And
just to add to that question, you said you collect around 50,000 tons, right? So I'm assuming all the waste cannot be used for recycling purposes, or
uh,
is it? So what
so
is the ratio?
a lot of the waste that comes is dry mixed waste, right? So we are not collecting. So we have, like I said, 16 collection centers now, right? Which is expanded over the years. In the centers, a waste picker can also come and drop the material. A small aggregator can also come and drop the material. A large aggregator can also drop material. Then we have reverse logistics with a number of retail outlets, etc. They also come and drop their material. We have work ongoing with on ground with a few municipalities, etc. Even that material comes to us. So it's different types of material, but essentially a lot of it is solid dry waste, right? In that solid dry waste also, the content of metal, etc. will be very negligible. But solid dry waste would mean, we primarily use in our recycling HDPE, LDPE, and PP, right? But the material that comes could be in plastic, it could be PET also, it could be a little bit of MLP as well. Then a lot of paper will also come in, because that's all part of solid dry waste, right? Now, for PET, for example, that comes is then segregated and sold to the right PET recyclers. If there is paper that comes, that is also segregated and sold to the right paper guys, recyclers. The HD, LD that comes out of it, and PP, that will go to us for our own recycling. And there will be some quantum of MLP, right, which is multi-layered packaging, not multi-layered plastic, multi-layered packaging, which is like your chips packet, etc. That might go for a waste to energy.
Um, Ma'am, there is a lot of myth which goes on into the market saying that usually companies who venture into sustainability, they're not able to generate revenue. So, like, I know you as a company, you would not like to disclose your financials, but let's say we assume a product which is for rupees 100, and there's a new company who ventures into sustainability, and we're giving you their example. So, would you like to break down your gross margins?
I can't break down my gross margins for you. But what I can tell you is that over many years, we have done 100% increase in our revenue year on year. And even this year, we are on target to achieving probably around somewhere between 50 and 100. And one of the first things that when you join this company as well, I don't know, you heard me saying earlier, unless a company is economically sustainable, it doesn't make sense. Just doing CSR activities is not part of what we do. We don't do any CSR. We're not even registered as an NGO or anything, so we don't even take any CSR funds, right? Because we firmly believe CSR activities, once the fund comes in, once the fund is over, the activity will shut down and that's it. That's the end of it, right? Everything we do makes economic sense to us. And if it also makes sustainable sense, we do it, right? That's how we look at every project that we do. So it has to first make economic sense to the company. And it also has to make sustainable, it has to make the right kind of impact as well. So again, I'm going to give you an example of Baramati, because that was the first of its kind that we've set up in India. We did a lot of on-ground activity, by the way, first to even tie up with the municipality, to even get to the stage where we can build infrastructure to give to the waste pickers to come and segregate waste and sell us. We did 2 years of ongoing on-ground work, and that continues till today. It's not something that stopped. But earlier it was only on ground, where we went door to door. We've hired a number of people on ground, gone door to door, talked about waste segregation, gone to schools, talked about waste segregation, done waste picker seminars. Now, these are called IEC activities, right? Which are mandatory for municipalities to do anyway. And a lot of companies do it. But when companies do it, they do it as part of CSR activities because they've gotten some CSR funding to do those, right? But we do not do it as CSR activities. Why we do those IEC is because it makes economical sense also to us. If people segregate their waste properly in that particular local jurisdiction, the waste that comes to us would have been through some level of sortation. It makes our life easier, right? It reduces the number of man hours that we have to put into it to segregate it further. So it made economical sense to us. And that's why that's an activity that has continued till today. Yep.
So, ma'am, when we compare your organization to the SDG goals that you have been, part of, which is SDG goals 12, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, and life on land. These are some goals that your company is associated with. So, how do you see that? Like, you've been associated with so many SDG goals, which a lot of organization right now is not.
So see, I'll tell you why. I think it's because it's the kind of business that we're in, right? It's a lot of flexible plastic waste. People have historically not seen value in that kind of waste. And it makes sense why they didn't see value. Given a choice, any waste picker would pick up a shampoo bottle or a PET bottle, like your Bisleri bottle, versus picking up a panni, right? Because there's a lot more pannis that he will have to pick up to make 1 kg than the number of bottles that he will have to pick up to make 1 kg, right? So they will make more money out of that material. So that is what they will pick, right? Even at homes, forget the waste picker. Even at homes, even if we would think about segregation, it is an easier thing to segregate your PET or your your shampoo bottles, etc., and keep them separately than keeping your daily pannis separately, right?
Yeah.
So it's we don't have the intrinsic value for it also, right? So there's a lot of education that we are trying to put into place about intrinsic value of flexible plastic waste, and that's completely made me forget your question now. What was your initial
That's
question?
okay, ma'am. My question was your SDG goals the company associates with.
SDG goals, right? So it's like I was saying that it's part of the business because it's flexible plastic waste. I think it tends to also make more of an impact because it has lesser intrinsic value, but we are trying to make sure that more of it is collected because that is the material that we use. It is our raw material. We need to make sure more of it is collected, right? So we are doing more on-ground work to make sure it's collected. And that is the kind of waste mixed with MLP and other things that tend to go to landfills more because shampoo bottles, PET, etc., people pick out. Even your municipalities, etc., when the waste goes, there'll be someone who will steal all of that kind of material first, even before it's gone there, right? Because people know there's value to it. So that is the kind of material that has a lesser chance of going into oceans or to landfills or to waste to energy, right? Nobody will waste it there because they know it has value. whereas flexible plastic waste will end up there. So, which is why I think the kind of SDG goals that we're trying to hit are able to hit is higher because of the kind of waste we work with.
And just to add to that, do you collect marine waste like plastics from marine or water bodies? I'm asking about oceans because it's a completely different segment. Is there something you're
I
looking
know.
into or already doing?
So I'll tell you one thing that a lot of people do tend to say, and it's completely false. A lot of people will tell you that they have recovered material from within the
Hmm.
ocean and then they have used it. Now, unfortunately, very honestly telling you, the material that has been in the ocean, if it has just gone in the last one day, completely recoverable. But if it is something that has been in the ocean over many, many days, it has gotten degraded by the salt in the water. It has gotten degraded because of the heavy sunlight, and the recovery from it is going to be extremely minimal. The quality of granules that you would get out of it, I don't think you can get granules out of it. I'm not sure. But I think the quality would be extremely depleted, even if you do. Right?
Yeah.
So, so very honestly telling you, if it has reached, so the idea is to make sure that the material does not reach the ocean. You're able to take it before that, right? So now, fortunately, the areas that we work out of are
Hmm.
more located within the ocean or closer to the ocean shores. So the kind of collection that we focus, our collection centers are also within, I think, a 45 radius of the ocean shores, right? So that is the material that has a higher probability of going inside the ocean. So there's a concept of ocean-bound plastic certificate, etc. as well. They certify material which is within a 50-kilometer radius of the ocean, because that is a material that is going to or has a higher chance of entering the ocean as well. Yeah.
Ma'am, what is your long-term vision for sustainability at Lucro, and where do you see the company in the next 5 or 10 years? And if there are any upcoming projects or innovations that particularly excite you?
So I think upcoming projects, we're trying to open up more Kapkar Kendras in terms of collection. Of course, we're doing that because we're really ramping up our production as we're speaking. Because of the policy kicking in as well, there's a lot more demand that has gotten created in India, because currently how much the policy calls for, that much capacity is not available in India, right? I mean, even someone like us, we must be sitting at a 3% of the demand that is going to get created by next year. So there's a lot more that needs to be done in terms of infrastructure development and increasing your capacities, and that's where we're focusing at right now. And that's really exciting also. And the more you increase production, again, goes without saying, Uska, you're going to have to double up or triple up your collection efforts.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you for this.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So
Sorry,
ma'am,
did that
my
answer your
question is
question,
that
Aman?
Yes, ma'am.
Did that answer your question?
social
Yeah,
indicator,
yeah,
na?
yeah, 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 I did. Yeah, I did.
Hello. So ma'am, my question was that does Lucro have any social indicator to gauge his success in terms of like social, what he is doing to like what is Lucro is giving to society back and all of these?
But we're developing infrastructure for waste pickers so that they don't have to go and pick waste from landfills. Like I said, we've set up one last year, but we have a plan of, I think, 15 more centers is what we have planned, which will probably take another 2 to 3 years to really come into being, but slowly, one at a time. That we want to bake off the same thing, because so that people have a platform to see, they need to earn a living as well, and they need to do it from somewhere, right? Now, you can't make everybody as a company. It's a wonderful idea to say that I'm going to make everyone an entrepreneur, but you can't set up a shop for everyone and give it to them, right? So what is the next best thing that you can do? You can give them infrastructure where they don't have to sit in the sun, improve their daily livelihood a little bit, where they're able to come to work and still earn money, and also have ownership of the material. So we buy the material from them. They come and segregate in our infrastructure that we have provided, but we buy the material from them, right? And this happens in rotation. So they're not employed in the sense they don't have to sit there. If they choose to come and segregate, they can come and they segregate and they give the material, right? So I mean, that's one. Another social indicator, that's in terms of people that are not directly employees of the companies, of course. In terms of direct employment of the company, like I said, we're trying to focus a lot on specific role creation for women as well. But it's very, very difficult, honestly telling you, very challenging for a company that doesn't have extremely deep pockets. Because I know there's few FMCGs that have set up infrastructures in places which are purely women run, you know. But unfortunately for us, it's not very easy because you have to give them a place to stay. Everything has to be done on campus itself, right? Now we don't have that deep pockets. So what is the next best thing that we can do is make sure that jobs that women are generally interested in doing in the local place that we are in, we're able to reserve that for them. And that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask that what role does data-driven technology, since we are in the AI age, such as AI sorting prototypes or blockchain
You guys
solutions?
mind if I take a quick washroom break? I've just had a lot
Yeah,
of water
yeah,
because my throat was scratchy. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Sure,
yeah.
ma'am. Yeah.
Hi. Yeah.
Yeah, as I was asking, what role does data-driven technology, such as AI sorting prototypes or blockchain solutions, play in enhancing Lucro's recycling processes?
Okay. So huge, huge, huge. But I'm going to take it as two different questions. One is the actual technology that we use in terms of software, and the second is that you're talking about in terms of AI sorting, which is at the factory, right? Now, unfortunately, AI sorting that happens. Sorry. Unfortunately, AI sorting that happens in the factory is not something that can happen at Lucro. Again, because of our focus on flexible plastic waste. Now, for that, you have to understand that the kind of waste that comes in India very different from the kind of waste that you will see in, say, an European market or a US market or anywhere else, right? Over here, waste is not very well segregated at home. So the panni type waste comes stuck one on top of the other. It could be different polymer types, it could be different colors, it could be different things. Now, AI sorting, unless you physically separated that out, and done some level of segregation, there is no way that any AI machine is going to be able to read it. And that's something that we have tried, but it's failed miserably. So, so unfortunately, right now for flexible, it's just not possible. For rigids, yes, I think it does work well. But again, since we are more heavily focused on flexibles, it's not very feasible for us at the moment. Right. Second was your aspect in terms of software, in terms of blockchain based technologies. Now, even if a technology is not blockchain, as well as long as it's following the concept of blockchain, uh, even that is good enough. And so we're using a software ourselves, which is based on the concepts of blockchain. where material is being tracked right from the point of collection to final product making. So essentially, if I'm making a final packaging, a roll of any sort, and giving it to any customer, I am able to tell them exactly which batches of raw material it had come from, various different batches, which supplier had supplied that material as well, is the kind of detail that I can go to. Now, of course, it has various advantages for us. Not only is it giving complete traceability, but even in terms of quality management, etc. If there's any problem with any material, we know exactly which batch of recycled granules it was. We know exactly which batch of when it went into recycling, who was the person that was managing the operation at that point, who was the vendor who supplied the material to us. Then there's a lot of advantage in terms of profitability analysis, etc. as well. Waste is very heavily cost intensive business as well, right? So when any supplier is coming in, or any region we are buying material from, or any collection center that the material is coming from, we're able to do an analysis on what are the different types of materials we got from there, how much recovery we were able to do, etc. So it just helps you plan better. It helps you understand your own business better as well, and of course give traceability, which is a huge thing right now, because people want proof of recycled content as well, and there's no physical test available which can read how much recycled quantity is there in a particular packaging. So the next best thing is traceability.
Ma'am, as a leader in sustainability, what would you advise or give advice to young leaders or aspiring innovators who want to make a positive impact on environment?
Can you repeat your question? Sorry.
So, as a leader in sustainability, what advice would you give to young leaders or aspiring innovators who want to make a positive impact on environment?
What advice would you give to young leaders who want to make a positive impact? I think it's heavily linked to what one of you had mentioned earlier, that most businesses in sustainability end up not being profitable, right? And again, what then I continued and said that if you're not profitable, you're going to shut your door and go away. So I think the main advice would be to really make sure that you have your numbers in place. A sustainable business will um, only increase, you will only be able to make the kind of impact you want to make if you are economically also sustainable, right? So really make sure you've got that covered. And you will thrive, by the way, because policies are in place right now and people's sentiments have changed. All of those things are well aligned in terms of marketplace, but you have to make sure that your business is making sense, and you will definitely do well.
Okay, ma'am. So now it's the last question. It's a little fun. So let's assume that tonight you go into a deep sleep, and when you wake up, it is the future, and 5 years have been passed. While you were sleeping, many things have happened, small and large developments. Please describe images of what you see in your vision of a better world. What is new, has changed, and is better? And how do you know, what evidence do you see of this? And how did you and your organization contribute to these successes?
So that is a nightmare of mine, which I have had a few times. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and suddenly I see one day she's really grown up, and I'm really upset. So that's not a very nice question. But sorry, in terms of what you wanted, businesses have changed in 5 years, is what you said.
Yes.
And am I happy with the change, or am I upset with the change? Is global
Yes,
warming
yes.
a thing?
It is there. So what do you think that what will happen after 5 years? If you just
Okay, I'll give you my very honest opinion. Okay. um, you have all of these INC get-togethers, and you have everybody coming on a global scale, coming together, and talking about governments and stuff coming and really signing one common agenda for reduction of plastic waste or whatever it is. When you actually think about it, there's of course representatives from governments who should be there, and which does make a lot of sense, right? Because everybody brings their perspectives, but they are the ones that can make the change. But you'll see 1,000 other people that will go over there and they'll talk about, oh, policy is getting drafted and this and that. And year on year, people go and make no change at all. People are just going and going blah, blah, blah over there and they're coming back. And they've ended up having more negative footprint because they're flying and coming back, and actually have done no work, right? Uh, but they just love going there, which really irritates a lot of us, in fact, sometimes, that you're not actually going and doing any impact. So the answer to your question is twofold. I think there's a lot of governments that are trying to do work, and I'm telling you that coming from a perspective of having seen really amazing policies come out from the Indian government, at least in the last since 2020 was, I think, the draft guidelines had come out, if I'm not mistaken. So EPR had come out in 2016, but the draft guidelines to use recycled content, I think, came out in 20 or 21, and that's really pushed businesses, at least in plastic waste management, to do more, to increase infrastructure. And there's a lot of, I think, players that have come and they've started investing in companies as well now, which was not a thing in the past because they couldn't see a demand getting built up, right? So the policy change kind of really trickles down and enables a lot of work to happen on ground. And that's happening. And I think if that continues to happen, it's we're seeing a wonderful space 5 years from now. But if you're just going to have people go and do talk, and a number of other people as well who can't actually don't have any contribution as such to the policy, then that's a waste of time. Does that make sense?
Just one more question and we'll conclude this. I forgot to ask you something. So there are certain processes that you've trademarked, right? Your process for the manufacturing and all. We happen to read on Plastecycle. Can you just explain that to us and give us a little more insight onto it?
So Plastecycle is basically our process of recycling the granules. There's a lot of sort of innovation, etc., in place. To make sure that we're able to get the right kind of granule out. There's a lot of sort of grades in place, different types of grades that make different types of materials, and then a combination or mixing of different types of material to get the right final packaging as well. And sort of that whole process is Plasticycle, which is trademark. And the reason we've trademarked that also is to give a bit of a quality differentiation, where that has gone through our trademark process, and that is why it is better in quality, right? Having said that, we do not charge a premium for it. But yeah.
Sure, ma'am. Do you have any question regarding the project or anything you want us to, make sure we include or anything like that?
What is your project, if you don't mind me asking? Yeah. What is it? What are you going to just make a report paper out of it? I did see that website, I think, that you had sent me, Naina.
Yeah.
So is it a similar thing where you're going to put out your details on the company on a web page?
Yes, ma'am. So it is like a UN associated webpage where where we students take up a company which is aligned with the SDG goals, UN SDG goals, and we make a report out of it and we submit it to the website basically. Then, then we're selected and all, then the process is different. We get awarded and we get recognition and the company get recognition on the website. That is how this. So there are multiple SDG goals, so we can take anyone and a company associated with them and understand the process and what goes behind it, basically.
Okay. If you need any help while you're developing it, any questions, more than happy to answer. I would love a focus on the fact that it's an integrated company. I gave you a whole 5-minute speech about that in the beginning.
Yes, ma'am.
And I would love a focus on the flexible part as well, because that's where we really differentiate ourselves.
Sure, ma'am. We'll be mindful to add those two. Thank you so much, ma'am. And thank you so much to give your time on a Friday night, basically.
That's fine.
Ma'am, just one thing, can we publish it now? Your report and everything. There's no issue from Lucros and everything.
There's no issue. If you just don't mind me reading it once, I will.
Yeah,
not
sure,
edit.
Definitely. Yeah, sure, ma'am.
But
Sure,
before
ma'am.
you publish, I do need to go through it.
Okay,
Sure,
okay, okay.
ma'am.
Sure.
Can we get an email stating that it is okay? Because we need
I
official
can
permission.
send you that email after you send me the draft.
More than that.
No
We just,
problem at
but
all.
we
I'll
just
send
want
it
you
to
to
you.
know that we require some official confirmation from your side.
I will give you the official confirmation. Don't worry about it.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much, ma'am.
Thank you,
Thank you,
ma'am.
Hope you have a
ma'am.
great
Thank you,
ma'am.
weekend.
ma'am.